Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, we are pleased to present to you Madam Tasha Troy. She's coming to us live in our studio, and we're doing a session called Inside the Business Mind. The whole goal of Inside the Business Mind is to give our audience, our listeners, and our friends an opportunity to take a deep dive into the character, the personality, the strategy, even that is employed by other professionals, so that they can learn from other professionals, but more importantly, so they can learn to build and grow professional relationships quickly. Today's expose is going to be in Miss Tasha Troy. Tasha Troy is the CEO and leader of Troy Communications, and she's an amazing specialist. HR people all over the world love her. She's great with cultural transition and helping people do cultural interpretation. And she's an amazing trainer, an amazing supporter of all things diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm loving having the opportunity to spend time with Tasha and to share with Tasha. Tasha, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a native of St. Louis, so from the Midwest, but I have lived in several different parts of the U.S. Currently located and find my home base just outside Washington, D.C. I've spent the last 25 years uh, engaging with international students and international professionals, helping them develop their communication skills so they can be more successful, whether it's at the university, in the workplace, or just at life in general.
Awesome,
I
awesome, awesome.
uh,
Is there anything more? Did I miss something?
no. What else do you want to know?
Okay. Well, we're going to go right into the question and the Q&A section. For those of you who aren't
Yeah.
listening, audience, if you haven't already joined us on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, you can do that. YouTube is available. We're going to have some chats available. Hopefully, we can get some discussion going around some of the things that Tasha shares with us today. For those of you who need to get in contact with Tasha, Tasha, what is the best way to contact you?
Best way to reach me is through my email, tmtroy@troycommunications.net. Um, Probably the fastest, the best way to reach me.
All right, and feel free, Tasha, if I'm yammering on about something, you can go ahead and put that information in the chat box
Okay.
for people to grab. I'll
Yeah.
do the same. But
I
let's
can
make
go
sure
ahead
we
and
got
put
some.
all of my social media into the chat if I can uh, find our Facebook stream. You can connect with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I do have a Twitter account that I kind of don't don't monitor very closely.
No worry about that. This is only being broadcast on YouTube and on Facebook. And so
Okay.
what I'll do is I'll post all that information in even if it's after the show. So you don't have to worry about
Sounds good.
catching up with that. Let's get into the inside the business mind questions. These questions I have to share before we even get started were organized for one reason only, and it's really just to truly get to know all the things you would want to know about a person to create high levels of trust so that they may be referred, so that they may be supported, so that they may be individuals may be comfortable sharing their ideas and thoughts with others quickly. We believe at the roundtable that this doesn't take years and years and years or a ton of different meetings. It really takes being able to be authentic and real and to go deep as quickly as possible in the relationship process. Now, that may make some people feel uncomfortable, but you have to realize in a professional setting, speed is everything. It matters a lot how fast you can get to high trust so that you can collaborate effectively and you can communicate effectively.
Well, and the truth is, I found that being open and authentic and vulnerable is the fastest way to build trust, no matter what environment you're in. If you're dealing with diversity in any shape or form, that openness and that authenticity really can break down walls and barriers to communication. So I'm excited to go beneath the surface and talk about who I am, what I do. I think we lost Marvin. I am not sure. But I can go ahead and get started. The first question that we like to talk about inside the business mind is focusing on the values of the roundtable. As you may or may not know, the values of the roundtable, there are 3 key values: collaboration, encouragement, and let me look up the third one. Communication. Should have remembered that one. Communication, collaboration, and encouragement. Of those 3 values, I like to talk about them in order that I developed them in my own personal leadership development. So the first one is encouragement. As I mentioned before, I've spent 25 years working with international students, international professionals, helping them develop communication skills, especially English communication skills. And in order for my students and my clients to reach their highest potential, I have to be an encourager. As an instructor, I have to give feedback where they're not doing quite right, but encouragement has to be a part of that process. When giving feedback, it's not, this is what you've done wrong, but this is what you've done right. Here's where you're not quite hitting the mark, and here's how you can do better. That last piece is so important when it comes to encouragement. And so that's something I developed. Marvin, you're back. I'm talking about encouragement.
I see. I caught up.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
So yeah, encouragement is definitely a key value, something that I developed in my personality and my leadership early on. The second piece was communication. I developed communication. The more I worked with adult professionals from very different backgrounds, the more important my clear communication skills became. Direct, clear, but kind and gentle and diplomatic giving of feedback and constructive criticism. The last piece that I've developed is collaboration. I'm a very independent sort of learner and worker and very task-oriented. But I learned, I've been very fortunate to have a couple of very strong collaborative relationships in my career, both with very different people, opposite of me in many ways, and yet working together, we created really effective and really rich learning products for our students and our clients. And so collaboration is the area where I'm seeking to grow even more. I know that I have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. As an entrepreneur stepping out into new territory, you find those weaknesses fast. And when you can collaborate with someone with complementary strengths, it just makes the whole project even better.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. When you think about those areas of collaboration that you feel like you can experience some greater growth in, would you mind telling us a little bit more about that? What areas really that you find that you're stretching yourself to grow into?
Oh, stressing myself to grow into. So as a natural introvert in a people-oriented career, I'm finding that what I call peopling can be really stressful. I'm used to working with a group of students or clients over a period of 2, 3, 4 months even. 6 months is the longest program I've taught with. And you can really invest in people and go deep. But as an entrepreneur, I'm meeting new people every week, and that can be a little wearing. So collaborating with really outgoing, people-oriented connectors is really an important part of my own business development right now. When it comes to some of the collaboration I've had in the past, working with, again, one of the best ones, my friend in Korea, she was very outgoing. She was very exuberant. She was fearless. She would walk up to anybody and start a conversation, even if she didn't speak their language. Um, and she had these wild ideas that were brilliant, but they were all disorganized. And so I came alongside. I brought some organization to her bright ideas, and together we created really beautiful, really powerful teaching materials.
That is outstanding. The next question we're going to get into is really about you. What do you love most about what you do, and how do you feel like it has a true impact on your target audience? I mean, basically, how are their lives or their businesses made better because of the things that you do?
All right. So what I love about what I do is twofold. One, I love getting to be a part of people's story. I learn so much from the people I work with, and I'm a lifelong learner, so that really energizes me. On the other hand, I love seeing people's relationships and opportunities blossom because of the skills that they're learning that we are working on together. One example would be a young woman named Veronica, and she worked with an international organization. She had a legal degree, but was not in the legal department. She was wanting to transfer, but her relationship with her manager, her director, was not real good. And her director was blocking her attempts to transfer to the legal department. Was able to work with Veronica on John Maxwell's principle, connecting is all about others. When Veronica put the focus on her director's values and what was important to her, the relationship started to change. And before long, Veronica was able to transfer to the legal department and move forward in her career in the way that she had hoped. And I'm so gratified to be a part of that process. Another example would be one of my students when I was working with Georgetown University. We did a lesson on listening, not listening for the details, not listening to respond, but listening to understand where the other person's coming from, what their perspective is. A few weeks later, she came to me, she said, Tasha, you won't believe it. I used what you said with my adult daughter. And for the first time in years, we're starting to have a good, healthy relationship. And I'm just like, that is why I do what I do. Helping people change their lives for the better through better communication skills, leading to better relationships, leading to better opportunities.
I'm with you in that. I know that studies show that with great communication, you improve relationships, which makes everybody stronger, makes everybody more productive, and makes everybody more focused on the things that are important to focus on. And it's so difficult, I think, sometimes for people to do that, especially cultural barriers, and it's very difficult. What do you find the key thought is for employers to have when working with diverse or maybe even cultural differences? What do they have to keep in mind as they're working with new employees from a different culture?
One thing I find a lot is simply understanding different conversation styles. This is something I've talked about a lot actually with in cross-cultural communications training. There are three basic conversation styles. You've got high involvement style. You can think about the sport rugby, maybe American football, but rugby is actually a bit more intense. You've got the high consideration style, which would be similar to the sport of bowling, one person speaking at a time. You've got very clear order of whose turn it is to speak, long pauses in between. And then you've got that hybrid in the middle, which is actually the mainstream US conversation style. compare it to basketball. You've got some really fast, intense moments, and then you're jogging down to the other side of the court. And then you got some really intense moments, and the ball's passing around, and then you're going back to the other side
So I don't know
of
what
the
happened.
court.
I think we have a connection. We're gonna try to get Tasha back into the studio, but she was doing a fantastic job of talking about how to move things along when it comes to cultural communication and being a part of that process. We're gonna see if we can't get her back into the studio again.
Hello,
Um,
am I back?
she's probably having some kind of internet connection problem that should be resolve
No.
itself temporarily. But while Tasha's out of the studio, let me take a look at what we have in the studio audience. I see we have my friend Richard out in the studio audience, and we have Rose Bono out in the studio audience. Is
Okay.
really, really good. Rose is one of our local empaths and hypnotists, and she's very good with helping people unlock some of the issues and the problems they may have from their past. And my buddy Richard is an old college friend of mine, which is fantastic to see you both on the program here today. If you guys have any questions about cultural communications or cross communications within organizations, do me a favor, put that information in the chat, and we'll try to get Tasha or to answer the questions, or I'll answer the questions when we come back. Um, and I'll see if I can't contact Tasha with some other device here. See what happened. She's saying she had a problem with her modem for you guys, so you'll know. Okay. Tasha says she can still see and hear me. Tasha, that's great. If you could reset your modem and try to log back in again using that same link, I probably can get you back into the studio and add you back into the stream, um, which is cool.
Can you see me
If
now?
not, maybe you could participate in the chat, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to do that, but we'll figure it out. All right, so we were talking about, and we're talking about and asking Tasha some questions about cultural communication, and she was doing a good job of explaining, telling us a great story that she was dealing with when it came to that. The next question we would ask Tasha would be, why she chooses professional initially, and what about the career journey that led her to the round table. And I know that Tasha had just come back off of an amazing trip abroad when she found the round table, and she was just getting started in her own communications business and her own coaching and consulting type of organization. And I remember her coming to one of our first meetings, and it was such a great opportunity to see her and to communicate with her, because she was sort of like a typical introvert, right? So she stayed in the back of the room and kind of got a feel for things, and we found her again. Even today we found her again, and she came in and just, I had to pry a little bit to get her to open up, but once I started talking to her, I was like, okay, this lady's got it going on, and she's still waters run deep with her, and she's got lots of information and lots of passion and lots of powerful stuff to share. So I'm glad to bring her back to you here, and she's back with us. So good to
Hello,
see you,
good morning,
Tasha. I'm
everyone.
sorry we had a couple of internet snafus there. Hopefully we'll have a better connection and things won't get wonky or anything as we move forward. Welcome back to the party. And
Thank
you were
you.
talking to us about, you telling us a great story about communication. Go ahead and finish that.
I'm not sure where you lost me because I was on my screen. It still looked like I was connected. So I got cut off talking about the 3 conversation styles: rugby, high involvement;
Yes.
bowling, high consideration; And in the middle, we've got a hybrid basketball style where you've got some fast parts and some slower parts, and anyone can jump in and participate. What leaders and managers and owners of companies need to understand is if you've got someone coming from East Asia, they're used to that bowling style. If they don't know it's their turn to talk, they're not going to talk. But if you call on them by name, just as Marvin was saying, when we talk to Tasha, she's really quiet, but if you dig in a little deeper, she's got a lot to say. That's a bowling style. That's why I was so comfortable living in Korea for so long. They use a bowling style, and that's natural to how I communicate. If you've got someone from Latin America or the Middle East, they're used to this really high involvement style. They're always talking. It doesn't matter if someone else is talking at the same time. It might come across as rude. And so as a leader, learning how to gently settle them down and let other people talk, that's an important skill as well. So knowing where people are coming from, it's not because they're rude, it's because the conversation style they're acclimated to dictates different rules. And when you're aware of that, you can begin to help everyone feel included and heard instead of quiet and resentful or loud and then being treated like they're rude.
You know, I find that's true even here in America. People who are urban and they grow up in urban environments, they're used to noise all the time. There's always background noise everywhere. They never escape it. And so if they have to experience quiet for the first time, it's like a culture shock. It's like, oh my God. And it's the same, you know, vice versa. You know, I haven't grown up all over the country in different environments, whether it's urban or rural or suburban. I see the transition and how people communicate and how people expect to receive communication based on the pace that they're used, the pace of their lives. Yeah. And it can boil down to, you know, all the social economic impacts as well as the cultural impacts to how people, you know, really communicate, which is fascinating stuff. You and I could talk about that all day. But I want to ask you the next question. So
first, real quick.
Go ahead.
Even across the US, we see different conversation styles. New York and California use a more rugby style. The Deep South, they're going to be more of a bowling style. The Midwest was more of a basketball style. So you see this across the US as well. So next question.
So why did you choose this profession initially? What got you to this point in your life and your career? And where do you hope to see it grow from here from you?
The journey here has been rather indirect. When I finished high school, I knew I wanted to live and work in another country, and I knew that the field of teaching English as a second language would open up doors for me. And so that was my whole focus through college, is getting my master's degree in teaching English as a second language and getting overseas. My undergrad major was in Spanish, and so I thought I would be going to South America. Surprise, surprise, I ended up in South Korea. Spent 8 years in South Korea, first working with children, not the temperament. I don't have the temperament for working with children. They were lovely. I just don't like making them learn. Worked for a couple years with university students, and then I had the opportunity to teach business English for a major corporation in South Korea, an international corporation. And I was there for 5 years and really found my passion. I loved working with the managers, some who were just working with overseas partners, some were preparing to spend 4 or 5 years at an overseas subsidiary, some were just going deeper and learning English through learning business principles. And I found my passion for helping them do their jobs better, have a better career, have better career opportunities through the skills I was teaching them. When the time came to return to the US, I continued working in a similar field through a program at Georgetown University. But these students were a step above in their language ability. These were naturalized US citizens, so they had really good English. They just needed some polishing to get to a professional level. The longer I worked
Mm-hmm.
with them, the more I realized the skills I was teaching them on public speaking, on leading meetings, on that deep listening to understand, these are skills that native speakers often need help with as well. So I started looking for opportunities to take that training beyond the four walls of my classroom. And that's when Troy Communications was born. Um, Through a little bit of trial and error, I found that there's a lot of interest in cross-cultural communication. But today, that cross-cultural communication can really inform diversity and inclusion efforts that different companies are making. The principles of crossing a culture are the same for crossing political interests, racial identities, religious differences. The principles are the same. It's the principles of respect and valuing the voice and the perspective of another, even if it's quite different from your own. We all have something to learn from each other. Where I look forward to in the future, where are we going? My passion is helping people communicate across those differences, whether it's personality, culture, religion, all of those differences. I, as Coach Powell mentioned, I spent 2020 watching the U.S. from afar, from South Korea, doing a little bit of comparison how the Koreans are dealing with things and how the Americans are dealing with things. But then I saw this explosion of anger and division that it's something I've watched in the US over the past 5 to 10 years. It's been growing, it's been developing, but I have a passion to help put out those fires and help people learn to talk to each other when they have these intense differences. And that was what drew me back to the US at the beginning of this year. Um, I don't have the influence with Congress to make them speak to each other more civilly. But what I do have is I can work with individuals and people at that grassroots level and help make our communities better one conversation at a time.
I think that's so important. A lot of people don't get that every individual has a tremendous power to affect change by just adjusting, how they communicate and how well they communicate to others. They provide if they can provide an example to each other. That example can spread just like it could go viral in a community, and where a whole entire community is uplifted. I mean, we saw that happen in the civil rights movement when Martin Luther King introduced a brand new concept of thought and then trained individuals to use that concept, um, called and they just called it nonviolence or passive resistance. And they used these words that, were not fearful words, but words that it made people feel like, okay, well, no matter what happens in this conversation, it's not going to escalate to a point where, there's blood in the streets. So you don't have to worry, but you have to be afraid. You don't have to be. And I recall a TED talk by Brene Brown, and she said that anything we can do to reduce fear, blame, shame, and guilt in our communication with each other,
Yeah.
we really should do that, because it really helps us to move forward in a positive way. And people can be more transparent and more connected to one another, which allows them to really see each other and
Yeah.
not see each other as not see the differences so much, but to see opportunities to work together and collaborate. But it takes, some. I think it takes a lot of insight to your own character, so you can be strong enough to receive someone else's perspective. I don't know what you feel about that, but I know that
Yeah.
I think for me it takes a lot sometimes to get outside of my own head and then welcome someone else into my perspective, and try to see their perspective,
Yeah.
because again, we might not have the same language, we might not have the same pace of understanding, we may have different syntax and how sentences are put together, which makes it difficult to get kind of
Yeah.
grab like, okay, what is it that you're really trying to say here? Even body language
Right.
might betray you. Which is right. But that's why communication is so difficult, and I have healthy respect for anybody who studies it, who teaches it, who helps us try to negotiate it, because I know if we don't do this well, then there's chaos, and there's
Right.
everything that Brene says we shouldn't do, right? There's guilt, there's blame, there's shame, there's fear,
Yeah.
if we don't do this well.
So I
So in
like to
any
say
case,
that the starting point of understanding another person, whether it's their personality or their culture or whatever, you have to start with understanding yourself. Understanding myself as an American from the Midwest, understanding myself as a Myers-Briggs INFJ personality, or as in DISC, I'm a CS personality, understanding who I am, what strengths I bring, what weaknesses I bring. Then I can begin to understand where other people are coming from. What are their cultural values? What's important to them in their personality? What drives them? I like to say every person has their own internal logic. Every culture has its own internal logic. So if you see someone doing something that's just like, what on earth are they doing? Why are they doing that? Ask them what's going on. Help me understand where you're coming from. What's that in? Try to find that internal logic. Because, for example, when I first moved to Korea, I read different culture books, and I was warned ahead of time, when you're on public transportation and it's coming up to your bus stop, you need to be standing next to the door so you can hop off really quick. And you don't have to worry about shoving or pushing anyone. It seems really rude, but it's the way it works. And if you don't push your way through, you're not getting off the bus. Well, it all went back to Korean culture is highly relationship oriented. And when people started moving from rural areas into urban areas, you couldn't give that same intense care to everyone in a city. And so it became either you are a complete stranger and you don't exist, or you are my long lost sister or brother. And there's really no in between. So if I'm pushing my way off the bus, if you're a stranger, you don't really exist. And it's how the culture adapted to the urbanization of the country. Right or wrong, I don't know, but that's the way it is. And there's an internal logic to how they are. Same is true of any person you come across. You see a person doing something like, why are they acting like that? There is a reason. There's always a reason.
Yeah, and that's what I often tell my clients and my friends. Somebody might be acting in a way that you think is either out of character or not necessarily politically correct or socially correct in the moment. And I think you'd be better to suspend your judgment for a second, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, why that might be occurring, and then figure out a way to ask them why this behavior might be showing up in them right now, without judging, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. Because you want them to be free to express themselves, so that you can begin to understand where they're coming from, and it requires patience on both of your parts, and the willingness to try.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, you
So
can't
the
influence
last
anyone.
question,
You don't start where they're coming from. You won't have influence if you don't start from their starting point. All right. Last question.
So where do you see yourself growing over the next 5 years? Really, if we look at you, 5 years from now, where do you see yourself growing, and what is it that you feel like you need to be, do, or have that you can't right now?
So the whole reason I wanted to move beyond the four walls of my classroom is to have a greater impact on the community. I was no longer satisfied working with 10 to 20 people for 4 months. Yes, I had an impact on their lives, and that's a ripple effect. but I knew there was more that I could do. There's more that I can do to help our communities and the people who are not in my classrooms. And so that's the whole motivation to establish and build Troy Communications. Um, my hope and my vision, my goal, I should say, is to establish a training organization that teaches these principles of leadership, communication, cultural intelligence, respect for diversity, um, and the communication skills needed to make inclusion a lifestyle and a part of an organization's culture. Um, I want to grow Troy Communications to where we can do international training as well. I, currently, I'm looking to work with mid-sized companies, but I want to work with large companies. I want to work with international organizations like the World Trade Organization. I want to help embassies as they are interacting with all the different ethnic groups that are coming to their countries. And I want to help the individuals who want that career advancement, but they need more polished professional communication skills to get there.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I hope that we find all of the HR directors, all the operations managers, all of the chief administrators for all these various companies and organizations. I hope we find them. I hope we get them in front of you, get you in front of them, and have them understand how wonderful you are and how great of an addition you'd be as even a faculty member or an additional consultant to help them structure their learning strategies as well as their cultural footprint in places where they need to go. So I thank you for participating, and I love you dearly. I'm so glad that you had an opportunity to do this with us, and thank you for joining the roundtable. Oh, speaking of the roundtable, everybody who might be listening needs to know that the roundtable is, we have a major organization with lots of online strategies and techniques and learning opportunities for every individual. Feel free to check us out on Meetup, check us out on LinkedIn. The 9-Step Guru is my particular handle, but if you use that, you'll be able to find everything that we do for all of our organizations everywhere we are. And as we grow, if you're interested in really learning how to network and grow, this is one of the programs that we do for our members. We do them inside the roundtable and we do them outside the roundtable so we can get inside the business mind going. Obviously, we have more time and effort when we do an individual show just for one of our members. I hope you enjoyed yourself, Tasha. I know I did.
It's been my pleasure.
Is there
Thank you
anything
so
that you can tell the listening audience that that you might want to share about the roundtable and how it might be helping you advance your career?
So, the roundtable has been a great place for me to grow as a professional and as a networker. Um, Having a connection to like-minded and like-valued business professionals has been invaluable. I know I could step into a collaboration with any one of them and know that it's going to go in the right direction. I'm not going to find myself in some moral dilemma with them. It's been a place for me to blossom and, as Marvin pointed out, let people get to know who I am in what I find to be a safe environment. As an introvert, I need to go deep with people, and the roundtable has given me the opportunity to do that. And the two leaders, Marvin Powell and Darren Marquardt, they are super supportive and super encouraging, and they've really created a very positive group to do business together.
Thank you so much. That's what we're all about at the roundtable: collaboration, encouragement, and communication. If these are things that you find near and dear to your heart, and you find that you need to explore and learn more about how to use and do in your life, then you need to check us out. You need to come visit us. I will post a link to our meetup group in the chat for both audiences to see from Facebook and for YouTube forevermore. And so you'll be able to get to us and be able to see us. Hope to see you guys at the roundtable. Thanks a lot, Tasha. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, boys and girls, that has been Inside the Business Mind. We were playing around with my good friend, Tasha Troy. She's just an amazing individual, and I love having her on the show. I love having each of you who paid attention, and hopefully that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook group. And we look forward to seeing you again inside the business mind. Thank you. Thank you very much.